this is the Undying Nephilim, and they are finally ready. Today I will be showing the next faction that is being added into the game, and that faction is Lanayru Province. I just want to apologize a little bit beforehand. These guys took much longer than usual to finish because various personal real-life reasons, but also their stuff is just a lot more detailed than some of the other factions, as you'll see pretty soon. And by detailed, I mean like their models and the designs for their stuff is really intricate compared to some of the other factions. But and also there's been a lot of other changes to the engine, which you might be able to just see at a glance here with the unit cards. But the Goron bases are working. Things like dodging is working. A bunch of other really awesome little gameplay features that I've been wanting for a while are now actually working thanks to Exodarian. I'll demonstrate some of those in this video, but I'll probably make a second video in the future, like showing the Goron bases and other stuff. This video I just really want to focus on Lanayru Province, which at the moment is probably my favorite faction, and they probably will be for a while. I really like their aesthetic and their music and pretty much everything about them. But I guess I'll give a little bit of lore and background before I start showing all of their stuff. So what is Lanayru Province? In Nintendo's canon, Lanayru Province has shown up in two different Zelda games. The first one was in Twilight Princess, and then they showed up again in Breath of the Wild. In Twilight Princess, they're kind of described as like a small vassal state to the Hylians, and they're composed of Zora that look pretty different from the incarnation of the Zoras from Ocarina of Time. In Ocarina of Time, they're very blue, and they have like the weird blank eyes, whereas in Twilight Princess, they're kind of fleshy colored, and actually they're multicolored, they're not just fleshy colored, and they have different eyes and bunch of different features. And then Breath of the Wild kind of continued that, where they look kind of more like the Twilight Princess versions. I'm not sure what the case is in Nintendo canon, but in Nephi canon, the Zora of Lanayru are kind of a hybrid of the pure-blooded Zoras, which are the blue ones, and Hylians, which is why they kind of have the fleshy skin tone. There's sort of a... I guess it's not really spoilers, but there's sort of a backstory behind how the Hylians and the Zoras were able to sort of create a hybrid. I won't really spoil that in this video, but anyway, in Nephi canon, Lanayru Province was a vassal state between the Kingdom of Hyrule and the Zora Dominion. A bunch of hybrids spawned there, and they broke away from both nations and formed a new one. And unlike the Zora Dominion, who's kind of got this bombastic gold color scheme thing going on, Lanayru Province they got a silver sort of thing going on, kind of like what they ended up doing in Breath of the Wild. But anyway, like with all factions, they have 4 different heroes. I will go into details about each of the heroes and their unique units and stuff in another video, as I usually do. So for now, I'll just pick Mipha, and I will start showing their stuff. So how is Lanayru Province different? Well, if you look at their bases here, they got these little plot things around their bases that you can click on. And what these things do is you build their buildings, and then you click on the little plot things, and you'll have these different options here. And these are little add-ons that can be added onto the building, kind of similar to the Kokiri. And I can thank, all of us can thank Exodarian for getting this build system to work. The Goron system is kind of similar to this too, a little bit different, but with Lanayru Province, you build a building, it spawns these little plot things around it, you click on the plots, and you can mix and match, various different things to their buildings. As usual, I have instant build on, so all these buildings are just going to pop into existence when I click on their icons. But as you can see, this building now has 3 little add-ons hooked onto it, and the really cool thing about this is since you control this building, you can click on the little add-ons and have them, you know, do their various things, like research technologies and build buildings. But if you're fighting against the Lanayru province, or a faction that uses this style of building, you can't actually target these little things around it. You can only target the central building. So if you want to destroy this or capture it, you can only target the center building. So it kind of helps reinforce this theme that it's actually one large, solid, cohesive building. But when you're playing as Lanayru, you can select the individual parts and then have them do their things. So let me just go ahead and build all of their different buildings, and I'll show you all the stuff that they got. Alrighty. And I'll build their fortress somewhere over here. Probably away from that lever. I keep forgetting to delete the damn levers on this map. They're probably going to attack my base every now and again. Oops. And here's their wonder, which again I'll go into a little bit more detail later on. But let's start by adding some of the add-ons to... I'll start with this one. So as you can see, Lanayru province has levers. I really need to delete them. Actually, let me just manually kill them. Anyway, hopefully that'll give us about 5 minutes of reprieve, or they'll all decide to attack me while I'm trying really hard to demonstrate all of this. But anyway, all of the Lanayru buildings are... I really hate these levers. Anyway, all of the Lanayru buildings have, you know, the various add-ons, like the building I showed here. Each of them have 3 different add-ons, and each type of hub has certain buildings that they can build, and then there's certain add-ons that every single type of building can build, like, I think one of the add-ons that every single one of their hubs can build is the watchtower. So you can add these little towers to all their buildings so that they can shoot out arrows and whatnot at approaching enemies. So kind of gives them a little defensive sort of a feel, which kind of fits with the theme of the faction. Lanayru is not a very aggressive faction, both in their playstyle and the lore. They're kind of hidden up in the northern coast, and they try to stay away from conflict, but their homeland's really, really rich in resources, like rupees and precious metal, so they're pretty much always being invaded by the more powerful empires of Hyrule. But anyway, I'll go ahead and keep adding on all the little add-ons to their buildings so I can train all of their units before I go into some details. So there, I think I've got all their stuff added on. So, like the Zora Dominion, all of Lanayru Province's units are aquatic, so all of their units, every single one of them, can go underwater and cross bodies of water, which gives them a map advantage on maps with lots of water. So like the Zora Dominion, if there's a river that normally is protecting a base, you can just get your armies to go across the river and surprise attack an enemy. So if you're fighting against these guys, like if you're fighting against the Zora Dominion, you'll want to place towers along bodies of water so these guys can't sneak up on you from various directions. But anyway, let me train their units so I can show them to you guys. They've got a bunch of cool units. I really like the units Lanayru Province has. They have a lot of really cool creature units, as you'll see in just a second. Now all the damn levers are coming to attack. I might as well just kill them with my units right now, and then I'll show the details after they're all dead. Alrighty. Let's kind of get these guys into formation, and show all of them. Alrighty, I think that is all of their units except for their Titan and their 2 siege units, which are in the fortress. I'll train them later after I show these guys. So, Lanayru province has a lot of infantry units and a lot of creature units. They only have one, well, they technically have 2 cavalry units. They only have one really good cavalry unit. So unlike Ordana province, which has tons of cavalry options, you've only got one really good cavalry option with Lanayru province. Most of your units are going to be infantry and creatures, and other than the Goma, I think so far they're the faction with the most creature units, which is kind of interesting, because that wasn't really the original intent with Lanayru province when I created them for Hyrule Total War, but they kind of changed into a creature-heavy faction, which I think is pretty cool. They have lots of domesticated beasts that they can train. Some of them are unique units that only their hero can train, so I won't be able to show them until I get to the hero video. But anyway, first up is the Conscript, which was the unit from their Hyrule Total War version. The Conscript is basically their version of a Zergling. It's a really, really cheap and a really squishy cannon fodder unit. You'll be able to pump these units out by the bucket loads and just send waves and waves of them to their death. They're kind of an early game unit to just help protect your base or, you know, kind of rush and harass an enemy base. They're very weak. All they have is a sword. If you're playing as Prince Rallis, you can upgrade them with shields and some silver armor, which is pretty cool. But unless you're playing as him, they're just a really squishy unit that you'll train in mass until you progress later in the game and you start to make their better units. Overall, Lanayru's army is pretty squishy. Their units are very low armor. They're a lot cheaper, so they kind of have a swarm feeling to them, even though they're more of a defensive faction, which is kind of an interesting combo. Most of Lanayru's strong units are their creatures and not their normal kind of infantry, because they have really terrible armor. But anyway, that is the Conscript. And it sounds like more levers are attacking me up here. Now they're running away, as they should. I don't think I showed their scout unit, which I normally start with. Their scout unit is right here.
Oh.
It is the Shore Sentry, which also is a unit from the Hyrule Total War version of the game. It is just straight up the Twilight Princess version of the Lanayru Zora, the ones that don't have any outfits and just the kind of frogish helmet on their head and a spear. These are actually one of the... I'd probably say it's the worst scout unit in the game so far. It's just a basic scout that can detect enemy units. When abilities get added into the game, it'll kind of have a leap ability where it can leap over things like chasms and rivers and stuff, so it can kind of get to inaccessible areas, which will make it a little more useful, but for right now, it really is probably the least interesting scout unit that all the factions have. So you'll probably only have 1 or 2 of them, since stealth isn't in the game yet, although there is a possibility that stealth might make it into the next version, so I really need to get rid of these levers when I play on this map and show you guys stuff. They can get really annoying. But anyway, the Shore Sentry, Lanayru Scout unit, kind of useless right now. They'll become a little more useful when abilities and stealth and stuff is added into the game, but felt like showing them anyway.
Oh.
Alrighty, what unit should I show next? So I showed the Conscript and their Scout. I think next is the Coral Lancer. Let me just find her here. Right... I don't think I trained it. Yeah, I'm not seeing the Coral Lancer. I must not have trained it. So let me train a Coral Lancer really quick. Here is the Coral Lancer. It is a spearman unit, so you'll want these guys if you're going against a cavalry-heavy faction. They're relatively cheap for a spearman unit. They can actually be upgraded if you're playing as Mifa, I believe. You can upgrade them with silver weaponry, so they're better if you're playing as her. But otherwise, they're a really basic
Oh.
spearman unit. Nothing too special about them. Their ability's pretty cool, though. They actually, if you have other citizen units in formation with them, so if you have conscripts in formation with them or workers, they actually boost the armor of those units in formation with them. Because they're kind of like Lanayru's police force. Their explicit mission is to, defend civilians and things like that. So they give a little boost to the civilian units that are in formation with them, which is pretty handy. Otherwise, really run-of-the-mill spearman unit, not particularly interesting. Most of Lanayru's interesting stuff is their creature units, which I'll get to, don't worry.
Yep.
So, that's the Coral Lancer. And then next up... Actually, I see the Coral Lancer. I did train him. She's right there. So I'll move her off over to there with the other one. Next up is the Coral Archer,
Oh.
which is a returning unit from Hyrule Total War. The Coral Archer on the surface seems like your normal run-of-the-mill archer unit. It doesn't seem like it has anything special, but courtesy of Exodarian, armor piercing is now in the engine. If you look at the stats, it's called true damage because it just deals direct damage to an enemy unit regardless of what their armor is. So this unit right here can actually deal the same amount of damage to units that have really, really heavy armor. The only exception is magic armor, but normal armor, this unit will deal full damage to them. So it's really good at attacking heavily armored units. If the Gorons are sending a bunch of fire warriors or ruby guards or shield breakers at you, these guys will keep just dealing consistent damage to them, which is really handy. Especially for such a cheap and squishy low-level unit, it really gives Lanayru a bit of a punch against some of the stronger factions that have really good armor, like the Gorons. So you'll definitely want to train some of these archers if you're fighting off Gorons, or even just any faction, really, because they're one of the few ranged units that Lanayru has. Lanayru is actually really bad at ranged units. I actually think, other than Rallis's unique unit, it is their only ranged unit, if I remember correctly. Yeah, this is... Oh, actually, never mind. They're one of their cavalry is a ranged unit. But other than the cavalry unit here, this is their only ranged unit, so you'll definitely want them in your armies regardless of who you're facing. And they always deal the same amount of damage, so that's pretty handy, even if you're fighting against a low armor faction. But anyway, the Coral Archer seems like a relatively standard unit, but it's got a nice little armor-piercing ability, so that makes it kind of cool. The next unit, what is next? I believe is the Silver Scale Slasher. Which is one of the normal silver units that Lanayru has. This is one of their better armored units. This one can actually take a bit of punishment. And it is also a defensive unit. Kind of like the Gerudo Glaive Grunts. If you garrison these units inside buildings, it increases their resistance to being captured. So if you have 10 of these, the Silver Scale Slashers inside the Civ Center here, it'll be a lot harder for an enemy force to capture this building to turn it against you. So they're really good defensive units. Their main purpose is an anti-capture unit. You'll want to garrison them inside towers and things like that. They're kind of durable, though, so if you have them in the front of your armies, they can soak up damage. They're not really good at dealing damage, though. They're a low damage unit, so you'll mostly be using them for defense, but I kind of like the armor design. The armor and their weapon is based on the, I believe it's just called Zor... No, I think it's... Actually, I remember what it is. There's armors based on the armor that the Zoras wear in Breath of the Wild, but the player can't wear them. And their weapon is the Crescent Spear, which... When I first saw the weapon, it looked really, really impractical, but... Apparently, it actually is based on a real weapon. It's based on, I believe it's a Shaolin monk weapon, and it's not actually supposed to be a military weapon. It's I can't remember what they're called. Some crazy Chinese word that I can't pronounce, but it has a crescent like the Zora one here, and then on the other end it has a spade, and apparently they'd used the spade to bury their dead comrades as they went from town to town. But the crescent part was used to fight off small animals like wolves and things like that. So it actually is a real weapon, but it's not a military weapon. It's a self-defense hunting kind of weapon, and it's only really useful against small creatures. So that was interesting. I learned about a new weapon, but yeah, I would not use these in a military setting. They're really, really bad for going against armor, which is why these units are a very low damage unit. And even in the lore, this weapon is ceremonial. These are basically kind of like their royal guards. They're more for show than actual military use. But anyway, that is the Silver Scale Slasher. The only real defensive unit that Lanayru has. Next up is... where is their other silver unit? The Wave Warrior. Which is one of the only overt masculine units that's in the Lanayru army, although this one spawned with a pink skin, which is kind of funny. It makes it look really feminine at a distance. But the Wave Warrior, its design is based on the Zora armor from Breath of the Wild. This is the bread and butter unit for Lanayru province. It's their basic kind of warrior unit. It's got the two-handed, I believe it's just called the Silver Longsword. It's not actually a longsword. It's more of a kind of almost a blend between a falchion and a saber. It's kind of got the curve of a saber, but it's not quite curved enough to be classified as one, I think. It's almost like a khopesh, which is kind of interesting. It's an interesting design. I made some tweaks to it to make it a little bit more practical, because like most of the weapons in Breath of the Wild, they're really big and clunky and would just be a nightmare to actually handle in real life, so I streamlined the design of the weapon. It's kind of hard to see from this distance, but I have, renders of them up close that you guys can look at, like in their unit icons. But anyway, the Wave Warrior. Standard bread and butter unit. Not particularly interesting as far as its abilities, although it will be immune to knockback when it's in the water. And knockback, I believe, is also going to be in the next version, so like these large creatures will be able to fling units around pretty soon. And once that's actually finally implemented, I'll probably show it in a video before I release these guys publicly. But yeah, these guys will be immune to knockback when they're in water. Like a lot of Zora units, they're a little better in water. But otherwise, they're just kind of a standard bread and butter unit, which Lanayru doesn't have that many of, so they're actually kind of useful because of their niche sort of role. And they have decent armor, because they've got the silver sort of armor on them, so you'll definitely want to spread these guys throughout your army. Pretty decent. I believe those are their two silver units. Next is the Aquamarine, which actually is, or rather will be, a more interesting unit. The Aquamarine is, as its name implies, it's supposed to be a unit that's geared more towards operating in water. So when navies are added to the game, what this unit will be able to do or be good at is actually boarding and capturing ships of enemy players, because the way ships work in 0 AD is they're kind of actually like buildings that can move around and you garrison troops in them. So this particular unit, when navies are added in the game, will actually be able to board and capture enemy ships, which will make them really useful for that role. But otherwise, they are just kind of a standard sort of infantry unit that they can actually dodging and parrying has been added into the engine, so they will have the ability to dodge and parry attacks, which makes them kind of useful for fighting high damage units, because there's a chance that they can avoid damage. So that's pretty cool. Even though navies aren't in the game yet, they'll have a little bit of use in your armies. So that is the Aquamarine, which its armor is based on the Twilight Princess Zora armor. So I really liked the look of that armor in the game, and I'm glad I was able to bring it over to my version of the Zora. But anyway, the Aquamarine. And then their other sort of unit from That building is the Marshal, which also is a unit from Lanayru's. Scorpion just gonna keep killing them all, I guess. Anyway, the Marshal, it is a unit from Hyrule Total War that's been carried over to the 080 version of the game. Although in Hyrule Total War it was an officer, so you couldn't actually control them. They were kind of just attached to your groups of units, but in this one they are the commander unit for Lanayru province. And most of the commander units for the factions are late-game units. Ordana's is an early game, but Lanayru's is kind of a mid-game commander unit, which is interesting. You can kind of bring it out when you upgrade to the town phase. It actually has really decent armor, even though it doesn't have silver armor. Although if you're playing as Rawless, you can update it with silver armor, or upgrade it with silver armor. So it's actually kind of durable, considering it's not a late-game unit. For Commander, it's kind of durable too, although it has a really low attack value. But like Commander units of other factions, it boosts the performance of other units, as you can see by the little icons appearing above their head. So you'll want 1 or 2 or 3 of these spread throughout your armies to improve the performance of your other units. If I remember correctly, the Marshal boosts the speed of units and the attack rate. I believe... Yeah, the walking speed is improved, and the attack damage is improved. So the Marshals will boost the damage and the movement speed of all the units within this nice big circle here. So that is the Marshal, the Zora commander unit. Not too different from other commander units, other than its place in the tech tree. Its really only defining thing is that it's a mid-tier commander rather than a late-tier or an early-tier one. So not too special. I keep saying that about a lot of their units. Not too special. We're getting to some of their cool stuff in just a moment here. This unit right here is Mipha's unique unit, so I won't go into detail about it until I get to the video on the hero and the hero unit. So I'll just move it over to the side. I will start with their shrimpy lobster unit. So first up is the prawn bowman, this little lobster creature here. It is a very, very slow-moving cavalry unit, and it's got an archer on it. The main advantage of this cavalry, even though it's really slow, is one, it can go in water, as all of Lanayru's units can. So it can cross any body of water and then pop up and start shooting arrows into an enemy base to harass workers or whatever. But another advantage of this cavalry unit, kind of like the goats from Ordana province, is it can climb up inclines and cliffs, which unfortunately I chose a map that doesn't have any, so I can't really demonstrate it like I did with the goats. But these guys can climb up inclines and then, you know, shoot arrows from the cliffs, which makes them really good at, you can kind of like station them at choke points up on a cliff, and then unless the enemy has archers, they can't really attack them, so you can kind of snipe units from cliff sides with these guys, which is really cool. So this unit is really handy despite the fact that it's very slow, and it's really weak if it gets into a melee, so you'll want to keep these guys out of direct combat. You'll want to sneak them around, sneak them onto cliffs and mountains, and you know, hide them in bodies of water and just pelt enemies with arrows. So, really, really handy unit, even though on the surface it seems pretty weak. I really like the design. I'm a really big fan of crustaceans. I know giant enemy crab is a meme, but I just find giant enemy crabs really awesome. But anyway, that is the prawn bowman. A very slow-moving but very, very useful and kind of sneaky cavalry unit, despite the fact it's really slow and doesn't have stealth. If you can sneak these guys onto cliffs and other hard-to-reach positions, they can cause a lot of damage that the enemy can't really do anything about, which is really cool. I always like units like that. The next crabby unit that Lanayru province has is the Hermitage, which is this big, giant hermit crab-looking creature here. It's really big, which is kind of its defining feature. It has extremely high armor value, so this guy is really resistant to damage, unless you're attacking it with armor-piercing units like the Coral Archer here. So a battery of Coral Archers will be really useful for taking these down, but really heavy armor. This thing will just shrug off and take like 1 damage from most units. If you want to kill these guys, you'll want to bring, again, armor-piercing units, siege weapons, or magic units. Magic units and mages can tear these guys apart, but to kind of counter the fact that these guys have really heavy armor, they're actually not very high damage units, despite the fact that they're really big. They have a very slow attack rate. They actually are not considered a siege unit, so they only do moderate damage against buildings. So that seems kind of lame. So what is actually what is the defining feature of this unit other than its high armor? It is actually a transport unit.
Yeah.
So you can garrison units inside of it and transport them into enemy bases, which is really cool. So if you train like 5 or 6 of these guys and garrison a bunch of troops in them, you can kind of just tank them into an enemy base and then drop your troops inside the base and like start capturing buildings and stuff. So yeah, these guys are actually a very durable, slow-moving transport unit. That is their main function. They're not a siege unit or a combat unit, at least not directly, although they can attack. I guess I'll demonstrate here. Although that lever will probably move away. But whatever. These guys are a transport unit. They're meant for that and not really attack. So that is kind of their unique sort of role in the Lanayru army. You guys get back here. Leave the levers alone. So, I like the Hermitid. It's this really kind of cool, slow-moving transport unit with heavy armor, which I don't have anything else like that in the game so far. So it kind of gives it a unique little role. But that is it for their 2 crab units. If you're playing as Idea, you will get a 3rd crab unit, but I'll go into details about it on the hero video. So, I'll let these guys kill this lever real quick. Alrighty. Next up, I will show their Scorpion units, of which they have 2. First up, it's a returning unit from Hyrule Total War. It's the Arurida. I believe that's how they're pronounced. Like most Zelda names, there's no official pronunciation for most things, so I just call them Aruridas. And it's this little scorpion guy right here. This unit, once stealth is added into the game, will be able to hide and burrow when they're standing still. You'll be able to upgrade them so that they can actually move underground when they're burrowed. So kind of like the roaches from the Zerg in StarCraft, they'll be able to burrow and move very slowly under the ground and then pop up in an enemy base. But right now they're just kind of like a light kind of creature unit like the Goron Salamander. So in the next version, if stealth isn't added, which it might be, they won't be particularly special. But once stealth is added into the game, these will be really useful sneaky unit that can burrow and slowly sneak into an enemy base or something like that. So they will be an awesome unit, which I know I've said that about 2 or 3 of Lanayru's units, but they might be more awesome sooner than later, which is pretty cool. But the Arurida, just a nice little Scorpion unit. That's pretty cool. The other Scorpion unit is their only sort of direct melee cavalry unit, which is the Iraq Dervish. These things right here. They are a little bit slower than normal cavalry, although I might actually make them pretty fast. Especially for their size. I might make them kind of a faster, heavily armored cavalry that doesn't deal quite as much damage. Although, the main feature of this unit is they deal poison damage, which slowly drains the health of enemy units. So even though they don't deal tons of damage up front, they can slowly wear down enemy units, which makes them kind of handy in the long run. So the Iraq Dervish, a poison damage dealing armored cavalry unit. They might stay a slow-moving unit. I might make them faster. I haven't decided yet on their speed, but right now, and for the foreseeable future, they're kind of slow-moving for a cavalry. that is their lone melee cavalry unit, which looks awesome. Fortunately, I don't have the sound effects for its walking in like I do for the horses and the goats and some of the other units, but I'll add them for the public release of this. And now we are getting to some of Lanayru's more interesting units. They're two snake serpent sort of units. So let me get these ones out of the way. I'll save the Gleoling for last, because this is probably the single coolest unit other than the Titans that I have in the game. And you'll see why when I get to them. I'll start with the shore serpent first, which is this sort of snaky creature right here. I actually haven't quite settled on what I want the sort of defining feature of this unit to be. Right now, it's kind of a poison unit like the Rock Dervish, so, you know, it bites enemies with its fangs and it deals kind of poison damage. It also has an area of effect attack. When it attacks enemies, it swings its tail around too, so it deals damage to everything around it. So it's probably going to end up being a crowd control sort of unit that just deals damage to groups of enemies, because Lanayru doesn't have anything else like that in their army other than one of their siege weapons, which I'll get to in a bit. The Shore Serpent is probably going to be a crowd control unit, which is actually what it does right now. So I think it looks pretty cool, and its animations are pretty awesome. I'm not sure if I'm happy with its size. I might shrink it slightly. I feel like it's a bit too big, but if everyone thinks it looks cool enough, I'll keep it this size. But yeah, that's the Shore Serpent, the first snake unit that Lanayru has. It's probably going to be a crowd control unit that deals poison damage to the one unit that it's directly attacking. It won't deal poison damage to everything, because, you know, its tail isn't poisonous, but its bite is. So it'll deal poison damage to one unit, and then everything around it will take a little bit of splash damage. So, Shore Serpent. Cool looking unit, going with this sort of snake theme that Lanayru has, which might hint at what their Titan is, if you know anything about Lanayru himself. Anyway, I will show the two siege units, because again, I want to save the Gleoling for last. It's really cool when you guys see what it can do. It kind of makes up for the fact that most of Lanayru's units right now are kind of run-of-the-mill. It has a really, really awesome ability. But anyway, the two siege units, which are both returning units from Hyrule Conquest.
Yeah.
Let me kind of separate them. First up is the Coral Mold Ballista, which is a really, really cool... It's a siege unit, but it actually kind of has some sort of application against infantry units. Like in Hyrule Total War, its attack can pass through enemy units and hit a bunch of units behind it. So this thing will impale the first unit that it hits, and then its attack will just keep moving on and hit several units behind it, which is really cool. And I'm thinking, because knockback is being added into the engine in the next version, I'm thinking the first unit that it hits will actually get it'll get impaled on the projectile and go flying back with it. Sounds like the levers are attacked by the fortress here. Yeah. I'll let them pull that lever and continue on. Anyway. Yeah, the Coral Mold Ballista. I'm thinking the first unit that gets hit by its attack will just get impaled on the bolt and go flying back with it. It might even make it an instant kill, I'm not sure, but that might be really, really powerful, so might not be instant kills. But yeah, the Coral Mold Ballista. Goddamn levers. I promise the next time I do this map, I'll delete the levers on it so they don't interrupt me showing stuff. I keep saying that every time. Next time, that'll be the case. Anyway. Coral Mold Ballista. Really, really cool siege unit. It is supposed to be a siege unit, so it does a lot of damage to buildings. It's one of the weaker siege units in the game, though. Its kind of special ability to impale units makes up for that fact, but it doesn't do nearly as much damage as like a trebuchet or a catapult, but it's really cool for its impale ability. Anyway. The second unit, which I guess technically isn't a siege unit. It's more of a crowd control unit, kind of like the Shore Serpent is right now. But it's the Shrapnel Flinger, which was also in Hyrule Total War. What this thing does is it launches a huge ton of these little sort of coral mulch shards, which will cover like a really big area. And what's cool about this, since things can be spawned from projectiles now, thanks to Exodarian, is the area that it covers, it'll basically cover it with a bunch of little spikes, and enemies that cross over it will slowly take little bits of damage from it. So it's kind of a slow, long-term, let me see, how would I describe this? It's a long-term, slow damaging area effect crowd control kind of unit. That was a mouthful. It does little tiny chunks of consistent damage to large groups of units over a long period of time as they walk over the area that gets hit by its attack. There we go. I think that accurately describes it. So it's a crowd control unit, not in the same way that the Shore Serpent one is, though. The Shore Serpent only deals damage to units in its immediate vicinity. This thing launches tons of little spiky projectiles over a really big area. So really handy crowd control. There's not too much an enemy can do other than kind of move their units out of the way. So I have a feeling a lot of players are going to hate going against these things because they're really hard to avoid because they cover such a huge area. Although they won't deal tons of damage, but I don't know. I think it's a really cool unit. It's kind of insidious the way it shreds up enemies' feet. So it's kind of insidious for such a peaceful pacifist nation. But anyway, that's the Shrapnel Flinger. And I think that is it for their units, other than the Gleok, which I mean their Titan. I'll show their Titan in this video, but I won't go into details until the hero video. But anyway, the last unit that is in Lanayru Province's army, and my favorite unit, and you'll see why pretty soon, is the Gleoling. This isn't the Gleok itself from the first Zelda game. It is one of its many spawn. The actual Gleok creature will appear as a boss creature, and it's much larger than this, but Lanayru Province has domesticated the smaller sort of spawn of the creature. So what is the ability of this creature? Well, courtesy of Exodarian, things can spawn on a unit when they die. And if you're familiar with Age of Mythology and the Hydra unit, you'll probably have an idea of what this thing's ability is. Basically, when this unit dies, instead of dying, one of its heads fall off. And the only way to kill this creature is to basically kill it multiple times until it has no heads left. As long as it has at least one head, it'll keep regenerating, and then the heads will grow back. And you can upgrade these guys further to have 3 heads. They only start out with 2 heads. But anyway, I'll go ahead and demonstrate right now. I'll force kill this unit, and as you'll see, one of its heads will go flopping off instead of it actually dying. So let me force kill it. And as you saw there, its head falls off, and the creature can still go around and attack units with its one head, which is just the coolest thing ever. So I really want to thank Exodarian, and you should thank him too for all the scripting work that he's done to get that to work. You can even kind of see the little stump there, like, throbbing around. I actually might add a little sprite of, like, blood spurting out there. That might be really cool. But anyway, let me train another one and upgrade it with 3 heads, so you can see that we'll survive with 3 heads. I believe it's this building right here that trains them. I'll go ahead and trade multiple ones. So as you can see right now, they have 2 heads, but they have an upgrade that gives them 3 heads, which I just did. Now, if you see, they have 3 heads, which is just really awesome. I don't hear their walking sound effects, so I need to double check and add those in. But yeah, you can see I had a blast animating these things. You can see, like, sometimes the heads will snap at each other and get mad at each other. These things were just a blast to animate. But like with the 2-headed ones, if you kill this unit, instead of it just dying, one of the heads will fall off. So there, now the main head fell off there. And then you have to kill it a second time to knock off the second head, which just happened there. And then you'd have to kill it a third time for it to permanently die like that. And the heads will be able to regenerate, so if you don't kill these units fast enough, they'll basically be immortal. You need to bring a lot of firepower to take these things out. And I really think like this one unit is just so cool that it kind of makes up for the fact that a lot of Lanayru's units are really kind of generic sort of infantry that a lot of the other factions have. Not so much in the appearance, but like their function. Like their scout doesn't have anything particularly special. Most of their units kind of have like one-off features that aren't really amazing. But the Gleok just, it really makes up for the fact that most of their units aren't particularly special. I love these things, and I love that Exodarian got them to learn. So I'll just go ahead and kill these twice. I love these things. Anyway, those are the Gleoklings. By far the coolest unit that Lanayru has, and the boss version of the unit that you'll be able to fight on a particular map will be even better, because it's a really giant one, and I think it'll have 4 heads. It'll be really cool. But, anyway, was there anything else I wanted to show? I'll show what their Titan looks like, but I won't go into details about their Titan until the next video. Actually, I'll show the Wonder. Lanayru Province's Wonder is the Rutala Dam from Breath of the Wild. Every Wonder in the game kind of has a special ability. Their special ability, which isn't implemented yet, but I'll probably implement it for the public release since it's possible to put in the engine. It doesn't do anything normally, but if it gets destroyed, it'll send out this giant shockwave of water, because all the water inside will come flooding out. It'll send out this giant shockwave that'll deal tons and tons of knockback damage to any enemies, like, probably in a pretty huge radius. I'll probably make it, I don't know, maybe this far. So any enemy unit around it will just get tons of knockback damage and get pushed away, like all the water that gets released from it. I think that'll be a really cool ability that their Wonder will have. It'll kind of make enemies a little careful when trying to destroy this. You know, if you're trying to stop the enemy player from getting a Titan out, they'll want to be careful because they might lose half their army just in the process of actually destroying this thing. So that's going to be a really cool thing that their Wonder can do. But anyway, their Titan is Lanayru himself, and his textures right there, which, as with the Ordanian Titan, as I said, glow effects are not in this version of the engine. They will be in the next version, so this thing will glow and it'll look cooler than it does now. But in the meantime, it is the Spirit of Lanayru from Twilight Princess. He has an Aquamarine name, which is Virlanacia, or in their language it would be pronounced Virlanatia. Yes, there is a fictional language that has been added to this game. I might actually make a video on that someday. A lot of thanks to Deox for helping me develop that, because, you know, I didn't want to just do a direct English kind of analog language. We actually have been slowly coming up with a fictional language that the Akalans use, and all the races eventually will have their own fictional languages, just to kind of show kind of the spurgy autistic levels of insanity that I'm willing to go through to flesh out this game. But anyway, there is the Lanayru Titan. I will go into detail about him in the hero video. Same thing with the Ordanian Titan, but I thought you guys might want to take a look at him. I think he's pretty cool. I don't think he's nearly as interesting as some of the other Titans, but I think visually he's got a lot of really cool special effects, especially when he dies. I'll save the effect that him and the Ordanian Titan have when they die for the next video. But anyway, let me just double check and make sure there was nothing else I wanted to show. I think I covered all of Lanayru's really unique standout features that make them different from other factions. I went through all of their units, I showed their Wonder. Yeah, I think that's about it. Their main features are the ability to add little things onto their buildings like that and mix and match things. The Kokiri buildings will match this sort of style after I kind of go through them and fix them. Their units are all aquatic like the Zora Dominions. They got more creature units. They've got the coolest unit in the game, at least for me personally so far, which is the Gleoling. What else do they have that's unique? They're really good at gathering resources. They actually have their workers can't be upgraded quite to the same degree as the workers of other factions, so their workers in the late game won't be as good as gathering resources, but they got a few really cool buildings that generate resources, like the banks here. Their banks can generate rupees, and then the sort of their religious building here can generate the other resources after you upgrade it. So true to their sort of because Lanayru province is a really kind of wealthy nation because they have a lot of natural resources. They're really good at amassing resources in the early game anyway. They kind of taper out as as they go into the late game, and the other factions can catch up to them after they upgrade their workers. But I think other than that, I think that's most of their unique stuff. Like with Ordana province, I'll show their 4 heroes, unique units, and their Titan in the next video, which probably will come out sometime in the next few days or a week. I haven't decided yet. I'm probably going to take like a break or two because I've been a break or two for the next 2 or 3 days because I've been working like nonstop on these guys for the last few weeks, and I'm kind of broken right now. But if you are a patron, you will be able to play as these guys probably as soon as you see this video. If you want to become a patron, I have a link to my Patreon in the video description. You can join and you can play as these guys right away. They'll probably be a little rough around the edges until I and Exodarian and Iron Wolf kind of iron them out. No pun intended. We kind of balance them and fix some of their little bugs and add some things like their wonder sending out a giant water shockwave when it gets destroyed. That'll be so cool. But yeah, other than that, look forward to the next video where I show the heroes and stuff. After that, I'll make another video showing the Goron bases, because the Goron bases are awesome now. If you're a patron, you can go ahead and test it out for yourself, and you can see how the Goron bases work. It's really, really awesome. If you like Battle for Middle-earth, you'll really like the Gorons. But other than that, yeah, thank you guys for watching, and hopefully Lanayru province looks really cool, and you'll enjoy playing them when they release publicly. They're probably my current favorite faction, and they're going to be my main faction in multiplayer until I get to like the Rito or the Anauki or some of the later, more oddball factions. But in the meantime, they're probably my favorite faction, so I'll join Iron Wolf's tournament, and I'll probably play as them in the tournament. I might switch between them and the Goma. But anyway, hopefully they look cool, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and hopefully you'll enjoy the next video and all the videos to come. Anyway, thank you guys for listening, and I hope you guys have a good one.